back in Liverpool and see you all here. Had 3 wonderful years at the club. The right colour today, the Labour Party Fringe meeting, so glad to see that there's not too much blue. But I love the game. It's given me so much. When I look back, the privilege of playing the game. I was talking earlier on about the old sort of bubble that you live in and occupy as a footballer. And sometimes when you're playing the game, you don't have that chance to sort of look out. And since I retired quite a few years ago, I've been involved in grassroots football, working with the PFA, working with the Premier League, the FA, doing TV commentary, all sorts, but never been able to be in a sort of position to give back, I suppose, to the game that gave me so much. So when Niall invited me to become part of Fair Game last year, at the inception of the organisation, I jumped at the chance to sort of see what it was about, not knowing too much about the journey, but since those days we've come a long way, worked with some incredible people, and I think the experts and academics have sort of taught me a lot, but shown me the value, I suppose, of working collectively for the betterment of the game, which I think all of us here today sort of appreciate. We've seen firsthand the fan-led review and Tracy Crouch's great work. I think my message is really just about, drumming home before the other speakers the importance of football, what it means to communities up and down the country, the impact that it has. I'm currently also involved in a Tier 5 Combined Counties League, Premier South team, Rains Park Vale. And I sort of started off helping out a friend of mine in the club, and I've become director of football and now working, sort of running many aspects of it. And it's exactly the same as having played at Liverpool and talking to people every day about the game, about talking about how important coming to the games and sitting on the terraces and watching us play were. It's equally as important when I'm there at Rains Park Vale, talking with one of the players' grandmas come down, and it means everything to her. She's got some physical issues, but she's also had some mental health problems. And being part of the fans, 100, 150, 200 fans that come to watch Rains Park Vale, means everything to her. And the impact that it's had on the local community and how we progress with the message and what we want to do with the club is equally as important, whether it's for 100 people or whether it's for 100,000 people. So it's been a great journey for me over the last 12 months getting involved in that club. And it sort of demonstrates, I suppose, the importance of, we hear so much about the Premier League and about globalisation and about the scale of where football is going. And we have to be reminded about how local football is, and we saw that with the pandemic and the crowds and how the empty stadiums, how we're beaming in crowd noises to sort of have to bring back one of the most critical parts of the game, which is the crowd and the atmosphere of the games. And it just demonstrates again that we have to be careful what we wish for when you take away that sort of focus on the local community. It has such a dramatic impact on everybody. So I think the other thing I also sort of thought about with this was the football pyramid. And we talk about the top end of the game and how the money is filtered down. You'll hear much more about that with the sustainability index, about all the other elements of all the things about the fan-led review, the importance of governments, distribution of money, the salary escalation, the cost controls, all those things. But I think the important thing from my perspective is seeing how players have developed. I was released by Leeds when I was a youngster. I went down to the 3rd Division. I had the opportunity to sort of learn the trade, and I got the opportunity to come back up. Had I not been able to play down the leagues and develop as a player, I probably would have fallen out of the game. And you see this time and time again, players falling out of the academies, going down into non-league, lower leagues, and coming back through because they've had that time to either work in an environment that suits them, work with coaches that develop their game, or in a system that nurtures talent at the right time, through the right stages to come back into professional games. So, it's absolutely critical that the whole of the football pyramid, the whole of the system is nurtured, looked after, and cared for. And that's really what the essence of the work of Fair Game is all about. The member clubs throughout those tiers of football, realising that working alongside Tracy Crabbs and Fan Road Review and everything else, is to support and make football sustainable at every level. I think what's clear is that football has failed to regulate itself. If football fails to regulate itself, it damages the communities. That creates the inequality, the instability, and the sort of sense of hopelessness is deepened within those communities. And so, therefore, it is essential that we don't miss this opportunity that has presented itself over the last couple of years. And I suppose my fear is that the foot has to be kept to the pedal on the momentum that we've had. The result of the Fan Road Review was unanimous from my perspective. The government supported that, and we need to ensure that we do everything we possibly can collectively to ensure that that's passed through into legislation. The independent regulator is what I'm obviously talking about, as part of that whole package and raft of findings from the review. So I think I've spoken pretty much about the fabric of many people's lives. This moment is about the sustainability of the game to ensure that it flourishes, and it's about connecting all those elements of the governance, the licences, the wages, how they're linked through to the turnover, the transparency, the accountability, and we'll hear more about that soon. The responsibility of the management of the game, and I suppose this isn't just about football being the issue and the governance of football. This is really about society and about the value that football brings, the values of sport, what they stand for. And without a sustainable game, those values are eroded and degraded. And I think that's our collective responsibility that we appreciate to ensure that we take away from this, that those findings need to be, or the government needs to be held accountable. We need to put into legislation the independent regulator as part of that raft of findings, and look forward to a much better game, a much brighter future, where we can all be very proud of this moment to take the game forward, where we've had many, many times before, where it hasn't been, or the chance hasn't been taken, and look forward to a brighter future. So I'll pass you on back to Niall, who will introduce the next guest.
Thank you very much. Next up is somebody who has lived and breathed the inside of the game, who has a great insight into how football can run or should be run, and is now helping transform one of our great community clubs. Really like to introduce Mark Palios, the owner and chair of Tranmere Rovers. Mark.
Alison, so listen, I could say a hell of a lot on this stuff, so I'm just going to say there's 4 or 5 questions I think need to be answered. I'm going to probably concentrate on about 2 of them. First one is it worth protecting the pyramid? The answer is a definite yes, and everybody accepts that's the game. Second one, does increased downward distributions fix the problem? Not without increased regulation. Otherwise, you'll be back to stamping water out of the problem. Third one, can football fix itself? I'll come on and say no. This is just my opinion of views in the game, as a player, as an administrator, as a finance guy. It seems to be that that's something the government's not so sure about at this point in time. Thinks they might be able to do this, so I'll come on to that. What's a regulator's job? Well, again, that's something I think they can wait, because we're not there yet, and we need to get that sorted. But I'll also look at the last point, the last question is, why does the government need to act, and act quickly? So my observation is, can football fix itself? Apologies, I'm going to race through this because there's a lot of reasons. I think you've got to recognise that this has been a long-term direction of travel within the game. And if you go back to 1955, when the first European competitions came around, suddenly that changes the game, and people are looking abroad, etc. And actually, importantly, the FA loses a little bit of jurisdiction because you're now starting to work internationally, and now we are actually globally. 61, the abolition of the maximum wage. I think that was generally translated into cities now more likely to have successful teams than towns. And I think since 1962, I think it's only 3 or 4 towns have actually won the top league. Most important year was 1983, the Abolition of Regulation 34. What you don't know about that probably is that that was a regulation that really sought to protect, to be going for years and years since the start of the FA, to protect football clubs as a community asset. It said things such as, directors couldn't derive most of their income from a club, and no dividends were allowed other than 5% of the capital of the club. So it literally said, this is a community asset, we recognise that. Allegedly, Scott asked the FA, or did ask the FA, he could form a holding company for Tottenham, which circumvented this, because they could distribute, they could actually pay wages. And allegedly, the FA didn't even respond. Also in 1983, they stopped sharing gates as well, so the rich got rich, and that continued on. The Heathrow Agreement in 1985. You don't know about that, was when a chairman not too far from this parish said that the smaller clubs are feeding off the game, and the phrase he uses, they need to be put to sleep. Now, that was when 5 big clubs took most of the revenue in the television revenue, which was becoming increasingly important as games were dropping. And then, of course, you had the FA Premier League. It was the FA Premier League, but they put the FA in the corner with the Dunce's hat on. And that hurts me because I was chief executive of the FA, not at the time, but subsequent to that. And then you had Boston. So this is a direction of travel that's been going on for a long, long time. It's the march of Mammon. And the interesting thing is, if you're looking at business, what do? You kill your competitors. If you're looking at sport, you try and reinvent competition every year. There's a fundamental problem at the heart of the game. And it should be recognised that this game, because of what John was talking about, and its community value, should be protected, and therefore you do need regulation. Quickly, global versus local jurisdiction. The FA only has a local jurisdiction. That's a weakness with the FA. I couldn't stop agents who were in respect of foreign players, foreign clubs, etc. And I wasn't going to hamstring English clubs. I tried to hamstring Man United, but that's another story. So many of these. What you don't see is the increasing sclerotic voting system in the EFL. It's got to the point now whereby the championship decides all the major issues. Yeah. And that is the key thing. So effectively the EFL only ever represents, it purports to represent clubs. It doesn't, it only represents 12 or 15 clubs from the championship. I was foolishly, when we got back into the league, I thought, well, I'm not going to try and go on the board, but I will go onto the governance committee, the governance review. So we came up with suggestions that I felt were just about dragging the EFL into 20th century, in the 21st, 20th century governance. They took it to find, we like that, the board, but we'd just like to change it. And that was about bringing independent rather than club representatives on the board. And so we said we'll put that to the vote. And of course, the club reps were put back on the board, and the main element of that, main recommendation, was just dismissed. What that then leads to is an apathy amongst owners, because you can't change anything. So you don't waste your time, you don't go to the meetings, and so the whole thing continues. And we get what we get, which is structural gaps. Now the gaps are where people, with poor regulation, they try to jump those gaps, and that's what you see. So individuals can gamble with clubs' futures, and also, importantly, with their heritage and their past. But with the benefit comes the burden. We like the pyramid because it's linked through promotion and relegation. And what that does is you see at the very top of the game 6 clubs. It's always been 5 or 6 clubs who threatened the breakaway. From the Heathrow Agreement right the way through to what we saw at the early part of last year with the Super League. So they can access global revenues, but they can spend them on the other side of the equation in a linked wages market that goes right the way down the pyramid, and you get a massive uplift stuck up there with inflation because they are linked. The wages system is linked, but only 6 can spend in the global market. And now I'm just coming to this is my perception, The EPL, the Big 5, 6, they have bankrolled the game. And by bankrolling the game, they've played on the fact that what the league does consistently, and you saw it with the EPP system, it mortgages the future for the short-term gain. So I hand out, and we'll take this. We have just come out of the academy system because it doesn't work financially for us. So just dropping down this, this specific role, the regulator, we can deal with afterwards. But if you think or espouse that football can fix itself, I'm telling you, you're one of three things. You're either a free market zealot, which I know in the current environment we can say you can't do that, or you have a vested interest you want to protect, or finally you read Hans Christian Andersen in the evenings before you go to bed. So very quickly, why the government needs to act now and it needs to act quickly. Everyone accepts the game is struggling and the game's governance is broken. The clubs are struggling now, and it isn't going to change or get any better in the short term, I can assure you of that. And for some reason, and you can judge it yourselves, the government's still not sure that whether the game can fix itself or not. You know, I've just gone through a list of things there since 1955, and I think the definition of madness is thinking you do the same things and you get a better outcome. But if you actually look at it, the logical body is the FA, because sadly, I can tell you now, there's absolutely no chance of that organisation moving from where it is, because it is where it is. You're at A and you want to get to Z, you've got to go through the rest of the alphabet to get there. There's so many changes required to what you've currently got, I can't conceive that's going to happen. And the industry needs cost control, it needs it now. It needs innovative thinking that's not fettered with vested interests. And by that, you know, I know we're probably in the wrong place, but the collective bargaining needs to be looked at and changed. And if you look at the acid test of, I'm not just talking about history, I'm talking about the acid test of whether football can look after itself. Look what happened with COVID. Collectively, all those organisations, including the PFA, the EFL, the Premier League, the FA, absolutely don't believe again, all had a bad pandemic. Funny enough, the game individually, at club level, we put 50,000 meals on people's tables together with our partners by September 2020. Individuals, Premier League players, etc. Other clubs, they all had a good pandemic because they showed what they were and they helped the community. But so innovative thinking, unfettered by vested interests. One thing I noted here that we say, you thought about upward parachutes. You say they don't work, but I mean, you just think about it, actually, if you accept there's a gap and you can fill that gap, instead of them coming down and doing again what the Premier League has done, which is to try and create a second division of the Premier League for their own league purposes, which is no dead rubbers, and you've got the excitement of promotion and relegation. So you need that type of innovative thinking, you need the agility to respond to what's coming next down the road. We've seen the migration away from gates being that important into television becoming really important. What's happening now is you're going to see streaming coming on board. And if we're not ready to deal with that, you'll find that the collective will suffer at the hands of individual clubs who jump onto that bandwagon and they can wrestle those streaming rights for themselves rather than collectively bargaining. And the last point is you've got to beware the modus operandi of the Premier League and to the game to some extent, because I think the game is complicit. You know, if you look what's happening in the EFL, why have we got this other rhinoceros on the table? The Championship may well leave the EFL, so it frightens and tones down what the EFL will say and do. Well, if you look at it, you've got extensive resources for lobbying, which is what they do. You've got perspectives based on self-serving statistics. We put this much into the game. Oh yeah, but we put how much into the clubs coming down from the Premier League. And the continued financial blackmail. I think there was an effort to reset the game according to the EPL, which when you looked at it again, they were talking about B teams and all kinds of stuff like this. It's always got that long-term view. So they look long term, they finance the short term to get the long term. Again, the clubs are complicit. And I think the one that is on the agenda tonight, especially, is that they're past masters at walking things into the long grass. Because they know they haven't got the urgent problem, and they know that, all due respect to Alison, who's our local MPs, and I do respect her, they know that the attention span of politicians is actually quite short. And how long is it in their inbox collectively? Did the government at the time just jump onto the bandwagon, the populist bandwagon that you saw? And that's why I think that I'm concerned that I thought some of the stuff I talked about, which is effectively saying, can the game fix itself? No, let's have a regulator. I thought that was an argument that had been won. But actually, in the small print, if they're saying that, well, maybe football can deal with one of the biggest issues, certainly in the short term, which is about redistributions, etc. And don't forget, redistributions without regulation is just useless. You'll be back here. I think that this is the issue that you've got to get on the case of the government, that they can't let this massive opportunity walk away from us now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's Mark Harris. Mark, you mentioned Alison. Alison has obviously been, as you all know, hot-footed over from the main hall earlier on, where there's been some really fantastic news this morning about Labour's commitment towards an independent regulator. I will shut up and Alison, who is the former Shadow Sports Minister, has been a really great person to communicate with over the last year and a half. I've had great conversations with Alison. I've even seen her play football, and she's quite good, by the way. She's way better than me. But I'll pass on to Alison. Alison, go.
The parliamentary women's team played at Liverpool's training ground yesterday, and it's like obviously a dream if you're a Liverpool fan. So I scored an own goal. Anyway, my own history aside, so I'm just going to be really quick because basically I agree with Mark and John, and you know, they have lived and breathed the problems with this, but I just want to talk about it from the point of view of a politician and politics, because when I was first elected in 2010, we had Hicks and Gillette, the owners of Liverpool. It was a very, shall we say, informative experience as a politician. But actually what really, really got to me was going to visit people in Bury with the collapse of their club, and this really hurts. You know, I'm sure there's people in the room who supported a team that has financially collapsed, or the ownership, as seems to happen with alarming regularity in this country, have failed to do right by the supporter base. There'll be people in this room who've experienced it, and it really, really hurts. I remember James Griffith explaining to me about you know, people turning up at Gig Lane, you know, just to go and look at it and remember their family's life inside that ground. And it really, really hurt that community. And then, you know, the same thing happened with Wigan. And it's important to people so much because it's, of course, it's about enjoying the sport, but it's also about people's families, their traditions. You know, there was a reason, Mark, that all of those people turned up to volunteer to help Tranmere take food around to people in Birkenhead who couldn't get out and do the shopping for themselves in the pandemic, because they knew that Tranmere owners could be trusted to organise it properly and to be trusted by those people receiving the food, that it was an arm of friendship. And those relationships don't exist in any arm of business. So when people say to me, you can't regulate football because it's like the free market, it's business like any other, I think, are they for real? Like, do they even know the first thing about football and why it exists and who we are as football supporters? My first point, it really hurts when it goes wrong. Second point is, you've got to follow the money. I mean, there's loads of things that are really, really annoying about football, like, you know, when they change the times of the games because of the telly, and there's loads of things that are really irritating. I think it's ridiculous when owners try and change, identity matters, like colour of club shirts, like why would anyone do such ridiculous things? But most importantly, we have got to follow the money, because the thing that is causing financial collapse is all of the stuff that Mark just ran through. That vested interests basically mean that all of the money flows upwards. 7% of the television revenues are redistributed down the pyramid. We cannot have a sustainable football pyramid with that amount of redistribution, because the irony is, as Mark just described it, that basically it's competitive sport. You've got to have cooperation over the finances. That is what it's great, by the way, that the Co-op Party are having this event and that they've worked with Fair Game to make this case. You do need that cooperation to make sure that everybody has financial sustainability, and alongside that goes firm governance, so we know that the bad behaviours from owners that worsen the financial stability of clubs in the league is not tolerated. So those two things, financial sustainability and good governance, is what you see the need for when you follow the money. And my final point is this. So, I spent ages telling people that, even though I didn't trust Boris Johnson as far as I could, I definitely couldn't throw him very far, so I did not trust him at all. And when he came out and said, we will legislate following the European Super League debacle, we won't give those football clubs an inch, I thought, yeah, right, you're trying to kid me. But I did think, well, actually, there's loads of Tory MPs that care about this issue because they've seen the berries like I have. They've been and visited those people like I have who are at risk of losing their football club, and they know how much it hurts. They don't want it to happen anymore. So I did think that actually the Tory party might know a bit better than it appears they do. And if they have really sold football supporters down the river, and this is my final point, then a Labour government cannot come soon enough. And until we have that legislation on the statute books, then I, Fair Game, the Co-op Party, Mark, John, and all the rest of us will be banging on about it. We will never give up because this is too important. Thank you.
Well, I also can't argue with that. Thank you very much, Alison. Next up, we have Jason Stockwood, who is, as I mentioned, a Guardian blogger. Brilliant, wonderful piece today, but obviously for my purposes, he is one of the brilliant owners of one of the greatest football clubs that actually is in the country, that's been a fantastic community club, has been wonderful to watch. As an ex-Wimbledon fan, I'm immensely jealous. It's not fair, but Jason, please tell us your story.
Thanks, Al, I appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. Keep this down just to 5 minutes, I'd love to start the conversation and see what people think about it. I have to thank Niall basically for the brilliant work he's done with Fair Game. I also have to thank him. He gave me the topic of ethics in football, and there's a director's test, so I thought it was a chance to use my philosophy degree, which I've been used for 30 years as well, so I won't bore you with that. But it's actually, we're pretty new to football, as he said. We bought the club 15 months ago, my partner and I, Andrew Pettit. And I'm an entrepreneur by background, a council estate kid, became an entrepreneur in technology, and we've been a fan of the club for 45 years. So it's a club that I know very well, and I've loved. That's my greatest memories, both my family and personally. And actually, in 1982, when I was 12, one of my fondest memories, so I was a ball boy at the club, and we played Newcastle United. Mike's a fan as well, and we met through Fair Game. And the Newcastle United fans were throwing coins and spitting at me for 90 minutes. And I made 36 pence that day. I was really happy. That's my introduction to entrepreneurship. I saved that money and took cash from the first business. But so the energy director's test, which I was asked to speak about, I've got to remember that that's a test of eligibility rather than suitability to run a club. We've spoken to the guys at the EFL here tonight, and that was a good reminder to me, because actually this sort of what's happened over the last few days has been I think potentially a good reminder for all of us, right? The free market orthodoxy and this idea about deregulation. It would be catastrophic for the game if they went back on regulation and an independent regulator has been suggested by everybody. And actually, it was only half jokingly suggesting, when I was talking about the owners and directors test, you know, it's a test to see if you're prepared to lose money, basically. I'm a professional investor for a living now. This is the worst investment, even before I got started, I've ever made in my life, and I knew that at the time. So actually, if you think about it, it's perverse that the owners and directors test is a test of whether you're prepared to be a terrible investor. Because you're going to lose money, right? So it was only suggested half jokingly that the fit and proper test, anyone that puts himself forward for it, actually should be excluded straight away because it was a terrible investor. And actually, there's some truth in that. It's bizarre. So, in the context of the last few days, my original thinking was about how you can improve the owners and directors test. And in many ways, they've all been perfectly recommended and annotated by Fair Game, so you can go and look at those. There's some things around human rights that need to be included in there, obviously, as well. There's something, we have a debate maybe around sovereign wealth funds, about whether they should own, you know, local assets. But actually, for me, you know, the way that you'll make sure that we have a game that's sustained for the next generation is improving the finances. I know this sounds like a really trite point, but you know, we can't expect regulation to be the gatekeepers of our game. We need the right regulation, and we can improve on that in terms of suitability, maybe code of conduct. And I'd employ you to speak to Chris, Chris Turner, who's from B Corp. I actually think that B Corp could be one of the answers of a standardisation both for business, and I must declare I was a trustee of B Corp before I resigned last year. It's about trying to get responsible capitalism, and that might be a paradox for a few people, but the idea of stakeholder management, the principles of not just obligated to shareholders, but to the environment and the community, will work perfectly for football. And we're proud to say we're going through the accreditation, which is really hard, to hopefully be, you know, one of the world's first pro sports team to be a B Corp. But I think there's some things working with Chris we could learn. But to improve the finance of football, this is really what we need to do. And it's a really simple reason. The regulation will take care of some of the eligibility, but suitability will only be improved if we improve the number of investors coming into football. You know, the people that can come in today are the people that have got the amount of wealth that are prepared to lose money. And there's some great owners in sort of 15 months we've met, people like Mark and Tranmere, you know, really care about the community, and you know, the guys at Wimbledon as well. We're modelling ourselves within that community, but there's also the other as well. There's a lot of egos, a lot of people who are doing it because they're chasing that dream of success as they go up through the pyramid, and they're gambling with these very precious assets, you know, football clubs that belong there. So, I think in many ways, I was going to give you a list of things about how we improve the test, but this trust has made it very simple for us, right? It's like we've got to attract better owners and directors, not expect the owners and directors test in the EFL to man the border of our game, but really we've got to attract better owners to the sport, and the regulation will be a flip to that and supporting that rather than the thing that we hope will be the thing that defends our game for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. There will be an opportunity to ask a few questions later on, people who wanted to hang around for a little bit afterwards. But thank you very much. Next up is a person I think from a fair game perspective, we wouldn't be where we were without her real hard work and her ability to gather and motivate some of the great academics and minds of football throughout the country, and has helped shape policies. And certainly we've been working really close. I know there are people from DCMS in the room, and we work really closely with them, and it is the thoughts and the brains that have really helped push us forward. So I'm absolutely delighted to bring onto the stage our Director of Policy, Fair Games, Christina Philippa.
I'm actually here to talk about financial sustainability. Part of the family review, and the reason for it is to stop basically the likes of Derby County, Bury, and all those things happening again. And at the core of that is financial sustainability. You can't really talk about financial sustainability without talking about why it's important. And we've heard, some of the stories about how football is more than just the club itself. It's more than just playing a game. Right? Now, I'm a multinational individual. I have multiple nationalities. I grew up in Athens, and I support a team called Panathinaikos who play in Greece. And we absolutely loathe a team called Olympiacos who play in red. And my entire family refused to wear the colour red on that basis. Now, you would have to know this doesn't extend to political parties, colours of cars, etc., etc. However, being a multinational family, we also have our English clubs. Now, my brother-in-law's done a fantastic job, propaganda job on the kids, so they all kind of support Brentford. So we're Brentford. My one brother is an Arsenal supporter because his best mate's dad grew up around the corner from Highbury. And my other brother is an ardent Liverpool fan on the basis of apparently an epic night out in Athens with some Champions League fans. So the point is, though, even for the teams where we had a choice, we didn't really have a choice. Somebody else made that choice for us. And communities are that. Anybody that supports a football team knows that it's all about not having a choice. And in any other industry, if you do not have a choice, what do we have? We have protection, right? We have protection around train lines, we have protection around schools, around local GPs, etc., etc. So it is more than just, we've heard about kind of communities, but it is about community, it is about that. So when those clubs go into administration, it's the fans that suffer, but it's also the local community. It's the small businesses, the pubs, the cafes that kind of work on match days, right? It's the suppliers, and all of those kind of small businesses, all the community that kind of feeds into a football club. That's who suffers when a club goes into administration. So just saying, oh, the club's going to come back up again, we're going to have a Phoenix Club, that doesn't quite cut through what the problem is. And kind of circling back to financial sustainability, which is what we're doing here. The problem is that there is a problem, okay? A massive issue, and Derby County and Bury is not something that's just going to happen once. We've seen it happen again. There are 11 clubs that have gone into administration once. Okay, we've had 40%, it's actually 39.7, but 40 sounds better. 40% of clubs in the top 4 leagues have gone into administration in the Premier League era. That's 2 in 5 clubs that have gone into administration. Okay, 11 of them more than once. Not ideal. Then you have the wonders of the championship, where we had the last pre-pandemic year, they had a wage to turnover ratio of 109%, which means for every £100 they earned, they spent 109 on wages. Forget all the other costs, right? That's just on wages, which is obviously not sustainable. So it's not surprising that you will, unfortunately, see stuff like Derby County happen again. And there are a whole list of clubs, actually later, I can tell you, that are kind of on the watch list for that. And that is not where we want to be as a society. So I'll keep it short. I'm not I don't like to do so much. So the point that I'm here to make is that it is really, really important to be aware of, financial sustainability is a real issue in football, and one way around it is what we've been promised and what everybody effectively agrees with in this room, all the speakers have so far, that it is really important to kind of follow through with the family. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina. We're coming towards the end of our session now. I think it's important that we look at how we can make a difference and what we can do next. And for me, it's a great honour to have Joe Fortune here, General Secretary of the Cooperative Party. Joe, comfortable.
I'm Joe Fortune, I'm the General Secretary of the Cooperative Party.
Niall asked me to wind up tonight to give a little sense of the need for change. I delivered a speech to the main Labour Party conference yesterday, and my 6-year-old and 3-year-old was watching it, and they FaceTimed me after and they said, "Oh, you know, why are you so angry and disappointed at work? You know, why are you shouting at them all?" And so tonight I'm not going to shout, I'm not going to wail, I'm not going to thump my fist on the table as I did yesterday, but my ambition remains the same. Look, thank you very much for the opportunity to work with Fair Game on this event. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about some of the issues that we in the Conservative Party and people like me find ever so important. I started in politics some years ago. I look very young and very full of hope. I know that's what you're thinking. But a long time ago, I had a life lesson. I was working for a very large transport and infrastructure company, something we haven't talked about tonight, and I won't talk about it for too long. But they were saying, look, we're going to run a service which only goes through one county. Only the same people in the same county are going to move these people from A to B. We're a bit concerned because we think we're going to be a bit unpopular. What can we do? And I suggested maybe a community dividend, maybe there was an idea of some sort of profit share, maybe this is a way of sort of slightly changing the dynamic within it. It went up to the board. And they came back on, no way, why are we going to do that? There's no chance we're going to do that. And it was a light bulb moment for me, and it's what took me to the Conservative Party, because ownership matters, governance matters. Like those who take those decisions really matter to the way in which assets like trains or whatever the asset happens to be. We're talking about football tonight. Really does matter, and it was a light bulb piece. I've been doing this for 15 years as a result. I'm going to give a little perspective about from what's in the cooperative movement. In the cooperative movement, we've been talking about some of the issues tonight for hundreds of years. Is the truth, and I agree with every one of the speakers. I agree with every one of the points made. I agree with the detail of what's required in this game. But from our point of view, what are the lessons that can draw out? Why are we bothered about these things? Why are we concerned about the same issues that the speakers are talking tonight? And for the 100 years, we're a £50 billion turnover part of the economy. My sister working for one of the clubs here in the city, I won't say which one, said, "No, our club is worth so much." That's only half of one of our co-ops in this country. Like, our governance model, the way in which we see the world, does do big business in the same way as the business we're talking about tonight. And I think from our point of view, for 100 years, there's some lessons. And so it picks out some of the things talked about tonight. Collective action matters. People of conviction need to work together in order to bring change. It's simple. But that's what we're about. That's what cooperation is about. That's what our movement's about. Collective action matters. People working together with the same ideas, with the same problems, trying to solve the same exam questions, need to do so. Otherwise, you're not going to force any change at all. Governance matters. Proper governance matters. People in my world talk about governance all the time. They love it. They absolutely love it. And so do I. But because it matters. It matters to the outcome. It matters to what happens from any part of the economy, whether it's football, whether it's anything else. Governance matters. And we've heard the reasons tonight in such bold terms. Ownership matters. Transparency matters. We've been talking about that. And I know Fair Game, I'm looking forward to seeing the tool tomorrow. Transparency matters. This is what we talk about all the time. We're hearing it in this game. You've got to understand that these are the pieces that we have to fight for. These are the bits which have to be brought forward in order for change to happen. Important for community assets. We heard so powerfully about the work through golden clubs. We heard so powerfully about the work of clubs within communities around the country tonight. Community assets really do matter. Stewardship matters. Don't forget these pieces. Don't forget these basic building blocks of a better industry, a better game, whatever that happens to be. These are basic pieces. We know that. Importance matters. I tell you what, ambition matters. Ambition matters. Don't be shy about what we believe. Don't be shy about the change that you're trying to bring. If you're going to do anything, you have to have that ambition. We've sought out to put together a different way of running the economy. How ambitious is that? That's mad. But that ambition matters because of our conviction. People in this room have conviction, people outside there have got conviction,
And I believe you really have to hold on to that very deeply. That's why we've campaigned for so long for support of ownership, a rebalancing community clubs, a rebalance of the use of those assets, talking about who owns them, who owns the land. That's why we've been doing it for a long time within the community, the Courts Party, and why we've been so pleased to work tonight as well. And proper governance in the game as well. I'll tell you what, and I'll finish here, about what I think that we know about change. So I've talked about what I think we know about what matters and what we know about change. Seize your opportunity. We've talked today about the opportunities that we have. We've heard from the speakers. We've heard about the demand. We've heard about the problems. We've also heard about the opportunity for change. So seize it. Don't be backwards. Don't wait and hope and think, oh, well, maybe there's a turn around the corner. Maybe the government will think this. Maybe the Labour Party will think that. I don't wait for any of those things. You can't wait for those things. So seize your opportunity. I think also don't give up. Ultimately, you know, you go through these moments and there's pieces where, you know, whether the approach review is supported, not supported, and it should be, of course. But don't give up if it's not. Don't walk away. Don't think, oh, well, we didn't get everything we wanted, but oh, it's all right. It's not. So don't give up. That's what we cooperate as well. And recognise your moment. Recognise the moment. Recognise the challenge. Recognise the problem, and recognise your moment. And there is a real moment here in football. It's been outlined tonight. You have that moment. So I think it's cooperated. We know that if you force change, you've got to recognise the moment. And don't be afraid to have a different view. Don't be afraid to have a different view to the way to the prevailing well. Don't be afraid to think something different. Don't be afraid to believe that there is a better way of doing it. And sometimes it gets too much. And like people look at you and think, well, I'm not sure. Oh, you know, it's all right, isn't it? Don't we get by? Don't be afraid to have a different view. Because you do. These speakers do. Fair Game does. So I'm looking forward to working with everyone here in Fair Game to achieve those different aims, to achieve that different view. That's what we're about. And finally, get on with it. Get on with it. Don't talk, get on with it. Start campaigning. Start working in the community. Start working with the clubs. Start working with the networks that you all have in order to get on with the change that you seek to deliver. Thank you very much, everyone.
A huge thank you to Joe. So having just heard that, this website here, on there is an opportunity to tell you exactly how you can take action. So don't leave this room thinking this is it. You just heard a speech and that's it, it's all over. Heard a series of speeches. We want you to write to your MP. We want as many MPs as possible to back Fair Game, to back what we're calling for, because this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Without people like you acting and doing stuff, nothing will change. We need it to happen. You get your councils. Every single council should be out there writing to their councils, make them a Fair Game council. The whole way, the template for it all, it's on that website. You can do that. You can leave this room now. So as many people as possible, get on here, get people writing to their councils, get people writing to their MPs, start supporting your local clubs, the clubs that are hard working in the community. Get them to really push for it, because without your support, without you helping them, those clubs will disappear. We are in a situation now where you've had clubs struggling through the pandemic. They only just managed to get through that. We are now facing a cost of living crisis. I'll tell you now that there are clubs that are basically looking at that and going, are we going to survive? There are clubs all the way down the pyramid, all the way down to National League North and South, that don't know whether they'll be able to pay their bills or even exist by the end of next season. That's how serious this is. That's what we need from an independent regulator. This whole idea of where we are with governance needs to change. Where we are with, I think a lot of our speakers mentioned it, we need regulation, needs redistribution. We need that whole financial flow to be looked at seriously, and we need the regulation, and we need an independent regulator. And all of you in this room can help make it happen. I just want to add a huge thanks to a lot of people in this room. There are many people from Fair Game that are here that put a lot of hard work in. Bart, we showed you the sustainability index and where that looks. That's our next big step from a Fair Game perspective. but also a huge thank you to all of our speakers, to Mark Pallios from Tranmere, to Christina Philippou, our Director of Policy, to John Scales, who I still get all kind of airy about because he's played the 88 Cup final, to Jason Stockwood, to Joe Fortune, to Alison McGovern, a huge thank you. Please show your massive appreciation for them. A couple of minutes left. I'm not sure if there are any questions, but if you did have any questions, do ask them now. I can see we've got one here. I'm going to ask you to shout and then I'll ask.
George Williams, Gillingham and Raynham CLP. I'm also an AFC Trust Life member, AFC Wimbledon Trust Life member. I'm speaking in a private capacity. I think one of the big challenges that's not talked about, and football has always been underpinned by owner funding and owners putting money into clubs. And this has led to a mono sort of model of club ownership and can lead to marginalisation in different models, such as a fan-owned club and its ability to compete equitably with other clubs that have sugar daddies and people that are prepared to put funding in it. And I think if we're going to change the game and change funding, we have to look at that issue too. It's not just about the TV money and the revenues that come down from that and its distribution. It's also about where the money comes from that goes into the game.
There's 2 points on that, and I know I can pass the microphone around to lots of different people. I'm going to be selfish, so excuse me Mark, excuse me Jason, excuse me Joe. On that one, for me, the issue is that we need to move away from the owner benefactor model, because the idea of where Jason is at, where Mark is at, we're custodians. Where I'm at, I'm on the board of Swindon, I'll point out. We need to move away from that model. We are custodians. You know, I've got grey hair, I've got wrinkles, largely thanks to the last year and a half working with Fair Games, but other stuff. When I go, I want my club to still be there. I want the community that supports my club to still be there. I want the history and traditions of my club to still be there. And I know I can look at Mark, and I know I can look at Jason, and I know that that's what they think. You know, it's that custodian model. You know, we are in a really privileged position. I am from an AFC Women position. I know I've spoken to Mark and spoken to Jason numerous times, and we're privileged. What we need to do is move into a situation where that privilege, that financial sustainability is key, that ability of making sure that football can survive and be on its own 2 feet and isn't in a gambling culture that basically puts the history and traditions of great local community clubs at risk. That's my view. I don't know if Mark or Jason, you might want to jump in.
Well, just that was the point maybe I was trying to make badly, was that actually the TV money that can be distributed more fairly as Fair Games suggested. That will make the club sustainable. At that point, fans great. Because at the moment, because it's unsustainable, you need investors that will underwrite those losses, so we don't have another Berry, Derby, etc. And so if you solve the problem of sustainability through TV money distribution, then actually the clubs become sustainable. As long as you have the caps and restriction of expenditure that Mark talked about absolutely critical at the same time, then hopefully you can have more fan-owned clubs, because you won't need someone who has to underwrite a couple of million quid a year if you don't have the football results that you need. So I think
But does that then close the gap, or does it mean that still, the top of the league will be dominated by those with big investors?
Well, that's why you need the caps and expenditure and salaries and the distribution itself. Which is the distribution itself. If we don't have the regulation around that on salary caps, on expenditure, we'll end back here because it'll just be disproportionate again. But if you have the regulator, an independent regulator, who can set that fairly, then the game will last for the next century.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'm aware there's also some more alcohol and stuff at the back of the room. Oh, sorry, Mark.
As an accountant, it counts as the opportunity to talk on this one. I think that you've got to recognise the first thing, that this is a journey that's going to take some time. The object of the journey has to be, and this is what the regulator should be looking at, that you get to a position whereby you get rid of the hand-to-mouth existence of clubs. Well, that's a combination, there's never one panacea on this. I'm a firm advocate for cost control. In America, it's the economy stupid. In football, at this point in time, it's the wages stupid. And there is a latitude when you look at the wage bill of the Premiership compared to the nearest competitive European league to reduce their wages down. It still doesn't reduce their competitiveness in terms of attracting players in. So you can get a balance on this, but you have to create that environment. The second thing is you've got to get clubs into a position where they understand, because a lot of these people are good businessmen, they don't actually understand that you've got to have a strong balance sheet. And by that, I mean you've got to work to put reserves in your balance sheet. Now, why do you do that? Because what you're trying to build is a balance sheet that has reserve, has assets that will create income that is what I call football performance agnostic. So take a really easy example, a 3G pitch, for example, and you've got the benefits of community access and stuff like this, but actually it's producing revenues for you. The difficulty is that unless you come in with that idea at the start, then you come in, you get dragged into the vortex of hand to mouth, paying wages and so forth. So you need to change the overall context of the game, and you need to have a vision that you'll get clubs over a period of time be self-sustaining. I define self-sustainable having a break-even budget in whatever league, with a top third budget, and you break even in whatever league you're in. Now, if you can't do that, with vagaries of budget and music and stuff like that. And to do that, what I need to do at Tranmere certainly is to build assets around the place, to broaden the balance sheet, to give me revenue streams that aren't affected by the fact that centre half stands on the board.
Thank you, Mark. I know there's a couple of questions over here. I'm actually going to walk over to you and let you speak your questions so people can hear it.
Hi. In 2015, I led a working party, Labour Party working party, with overlooking the whole of fan ownership and the way that we were actually going to develop the relationship between the party and the football community. And in the manifesto, some of you may remember, was that there was a commitment to actually have at least 10% of fan ownership on the board, directors on the board, and established trusts. Now, I wear another hat, because I've actually, for the last 10 years, been chairman of the Manchester United Supporters Trust. Now, I know United are the most popular club in the world in relation to this, but our trust is probably the biggest of the trusts. And we've had a long running battle, as you know. In 2005, the Glazers bought the club. And I had some shares in the club. I did many. I owned a brick of Old Trafford. There was my brick. I owned one big brick. They bought that brick, and I was getting a few £1,000 because that was the number of the shares. And we were left with this. What we've got to now, and the European Super League was a disaster. Actually, it was the very best thing that ever happened. Because we've had the fan review, we've had the Glazers now backpedaling like mad. We at Old Trafford have now got, at Manchester United, have now got a fans advisory board which takes part, and that's happening in other clubs. But the best news at the moment is we are in negotiation with the club or the Glazer family to begin to think seriously about issuing fan shares, so that we will have some shares, and my brick will be much smaller, but it will still be there. And I think that's a really important step forward, because it was touched upon about fan ownership. Because ultimately, that is what you want. You want people in the community sitting around these tables, sitting around the boardroom table, having a say about what it means to the community and what it means to them. And if you feel you own something, the fact that I own a blade of grass at Old Trafford actually means something. It means something to all of us, all 76,000 of us when we go there. This is not that United are not the best example because they're so large, but the principles are there. They're the same for Grimsby, they're the same for Chillingham, or whatever club that you choose. And I think that the Labour Party has got to look back to what we really achieved in 2015, because you may not know, but actually, it wasn't just in the manifesto. If we had won that election, it was actually going to be in the first Queen's speech that Ed was going to produce. It's a great sadness. We've had the announcement a couple of days ago that Liz Truss is backpedaling on regulation. I really worry about that. I really worry about it. It's been touched upon by the speakers. So forgive me for taking such a long time about this, but crucially it's about crowd ownership. And if United do it, and we're hoping in the next few days we'll get a decision about this, if United and people like Glazers are prepared to issue fan shares, that will send reverberations throughout the whole game, because other championship clubs, other premiership clubs will have the pressure to do the same thing. So thank you very much.
Can I ask you a question about will the fan shares have voting rights?
Sorry?
Will the fan shares have voting rights?
They will.
I'm sure there's lots more people. There's lots of really great people in this room. I can gossip to you all. We could all gossip together. So what I'm going to do is bring this meeting to a close here. We're not all going to disappear. So you can certainly come and grab me, talk to me, you can talk to, I've pulled some other people out. Mike Baker, who's our Director of Advocacy. You've got Ian Bridge at the back, who's our Director of Club Engagement. So any clubs here that you can speak to, Ian, get your hand up there. So it's, it's really important that we do all kind of, we all get to go there. There is also an England-Germany game going on, so some of you might want to go watch that. I don't know, I can't think why. But otherwise, just a massive, massive thank you for being here and help us change the world of football. That's our mission. Thank you very much.